when the Ark of the Covenant is captured by the Philistines, and as a result, they put it in the temple with their god Dagon, and the next day they go in there, and the god Dagon is fallen down, and then the next day after that, he's fallen down, his head's chopped off, and his hands are cut off too. Hello everybody, I want to welcome you again to another edition of the Uncensored Pilgrims. I'm Marty McLain, along with the ever irrepressible
Paul Price.
And we are here together once again in the basement. We've taken a few weeks off. Paul, you've had an event happen in your life.
Yes, had a new baby.
Bambino.
Baby Ivan.
Ivan. That's a good Russian name, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've been he's got some special challenges, so we've been spending time trying to help him out and keeping us busy.
All right, keeping the Price household busy.
Yes.
And y'all be in prayer for Ivan. He's coming right along, but continue to be in prayer for Ivan and for the other kids too, having an adjustment.
Yeah, well, they're perfectly happy.
Okay,
they're doing good.
All right. Well, today we're going to talk about the Ark of the Covenant.
Yes.
Now, everybody has seen the Raiders of the Lost Ark. I would imagine everybody has seen the Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Now, isn't that the one where the guy's face melts off?
Isn't
that the most memorable part of that movie?
And you only thought that happened during a heavy metal concert,
yeah,
right?
Yeah. When your face melts off.
Yes.
It's so good.
Yeah, there was some melting of faces.
Yeah.
There was some holes being shot through people.
Now, that is biblical, right? I think the Bible talks about faces melting, right?
I'll have to look that up. Yeah, but let me tell you something. They melted like wax. So I went back and looked at it today again.
Oh, yeah. It looks like wax. I think they used wax. Must have.
It looked like wax, but, man, it got the point across. You don't mess with the Ark of the Covenant, man. You sure don't look inside of it. But anyway, when we talk about the Ark of the Covenant, of course, this was a piece of furniture. We'll call it a piece of furniture. Kind of sounds trivial if I say it's a piece of furniture, but
yeah,
it basically was part of the furnishings there in the tabernacle originally, and then it was placed in the temple when Solomon built the temple there in Jerusalem. But it is basically a box. The dimensions in our way of measuring would be 3.75 feet long, 2.25 feet wide, 2.25 feet high. It was made of acacia wood and covered with gold inside and out.
So we're really not talking about a very large item here.
No, they put poles through it, and they would carry it on their shoulders.
Yeah.
The priest would. It had the mercy seat on it, and it had the two cherubim that were one on each side of the mercy seat. Of course, the mercy seat is where the blood was placed on the Day of Atonement every year by the high priest. It was probably constructed around 1445 BC. It was had some stuff in it. Do you know what it had in it?
I don't remember the full list. Wasn't it? There was a rod that bloomed.
Yeah.
That was put in there.
Aaron's rod that budded.
Rod that budded or bloomed.
Ten Commandments.
The Ten Commandments, okay. Was that the first or the second?
It had to be the second because he broke, they say Moses broke all 10 Commandments.
Yeah. But wouldn't you have kept those pieces just as a souvenir? I mean, who knows? Maybe the broken one was in there too.
I don't know. I think I would have gotten away from them.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that was not a good situation when that happened. And you had a jar of the manna.
Okay. Oh, and it kept.
Yeah.
I thought the manna dissolved when it was...
Not that jar that they put in the Ark of the Covenant.
Okay.
They had a jar. So, basically it was a reminder of the covenant that they had.
Yeah, so just basically items to remind them of their past.
God's faithfulness and the covenant, of course, the
right.
Ten Commandments. And so you had this Ark of the Covenant. It was a possession of the Jews. It would be associated with the tabernacle, and then later in the temple. It would be in the Holy of Holies there in the temple in Jerusalem. It was a very sacred piece of, once again, I'll say furniture. But there are some instances in the Bible where it was very significant. When they were entering into the promised land and Joshua had the priests go to the Jordan River, well, when they were carrying the ark and the priests, when their feet touched the water stopped. And they went across on dry land through the Jordan River. There's also another instance in 1 Samuel chapter 4 when the Ark of the Covenant is captured by the Philistines, and as a result, they put it in the temple with their god Dagon, and the next day they go in there, and the god Dagon is falling down, and then the next day after that, he's falling down, his head's chopped off, and his hands are cut off too.
Okay.
So they realize after a while, this may not be a good thing for us to have. The Philistines, who had captured the Ark of the Covenant from the Jews.
Right.
And then all of a sudden they started breaking out in these tumors. Now some people said they were hemorrhoids, but there's some type of tumors, and it was associated in some way with some rats. And so long story short, they sent the Ark back to the Jews.
Yeah.
They were like, we don't need this, we don't want this. This is not doing us well.
Yeah.
So, those are some of the instances with the Ark of the Covenant. Where did the Ark of the Covenant go? Where did it wind up, Paul?
Well, it's an interesting question because I don't think the Bible specifically says what happened to it. It just stops mentioning it, right?
Right. The last mention that we have of it as far as its location is 2 Chronicles 35, 1 through 6, and 2 Kings 23, 21 through 23. It's when Josiah, the king, has them bring it back into the temple. Mm-hmm. He's restoring true worship there in Jerusalem. He's a good king. He was the last good king, actually. And he had them bring back the Ark of the Covenant. Now, there'd be some that said the Ark of the Covenant had been taken before that, but, with that in Scripture like that, it looks like it was still there during the time of Josiah.
Well, I'll tell you I'll start with the uninteresting answer, and then you maybe take us through some of the
salacious, man. I want stuff that's like, we can put on TV or something.
Yeah. So here's the non-salacious answer.
Oh, come on, man.
That's I a lot of times will look for these types of questions on creation.com, other websites like ICR.org or Answers in Genesis. Got Questions is another good one.
Yeah.
At creation.com they say the ark was probably lost or destroyed when the Babylonians sacked Jerusalem in 587 BC.
Okay.
And destroyed the temple.
All right.
If Jews had hidden it, the ark would surely have been used in the second temple, which Josephus says it wasn't. Mm-hmm. And then they quote Jewish Wars 5:219. So,
and that's one thing that people don't realize, I don't think, that there was no Ark of the Covenant in the second temple.
Yeah, I never realized that before either.
The one built by Zerubbabel did not have the Ark.
Yeah. And so the argument being made here is, if the Jews still had it,
they would have used
why would they not have used it in the temple?
Right.
So that's their argument. But now I'm aware that there's lots of other arguments out there. I remember I used to hear this, and I don't know who the guy is necessarily that put out this claim.
Okay.
But maybe I'm sure you've read this one about how allegedly it was being stored under the mountain where Jesus was crucified.
Right.
And then when the earthquake broke it, then the actual blood of Jesus fell down through the crack and landed on the mercy seat.
Yeah.
I've heard that claim.
There are some that believe it is hidden in the cave, that it's hidden underneath the Temple Mount.
Okay.
And of course, today you cannot get to the Temple Mount because of the dome of the rock.
But Jesus wasn't crucified on the Temple Mount, though.
That's true.
So that's a different claim. See, there's all these different rumors about it.
Yeah.
So the one I heard was that it was right underneath where he was crucified. So his blood actually fell down and hit the mercy seat,
All right.
Which
interesting.
It sounds interesting, but it seems more like a tall tale.
Yes.
But there you go.
Yeah. Well, you got you got some that would say, as I mentioned, that it's underneath the Temple Mount, and you of course, the Dome of the Rock, the Temple Mount now in Jerusalem. If you try to do anything with that, you're going to cause World War III. Some would say it's hidden in a cave by Jeremiah.
Okay.
And the reason why they say that in 2 Maccabees.
Now that's an apocryphal book, right?
Right. there's a report that just prior to the Babylonian invasion, that Jeremiah had some type of a divine revelation. He said that the ark should accompany him, and he went off to a mountain that Moses climbed to see the Promised Land, Mount Nebo.
Nebo.
And that somewhere out in that area, that he concealed the Ark of the Covenant.
Mm-hmm.
And here's what it says in the second Maccabees, quote, "Some of those who followed him came up intending to mark the path, but they could not find it. When Jeremiah heard of this, he reproved them. The place is to remain unknown until the Lord gathers his people together again and shows them mercy. Then the Lord will disclose these things, and the glory of the Lord will be seen in the cloud, just as it appeared in the time of Moses and when Solomon prayed that the temple might be gloriously sanctified." So there's some, from the second Maccabees, they said, well, you know what, look, Jeremiah, he hid it where it cannot be found, but some would say, I think somewhere where the Dead Sea Scrolls were, that there is some type of a map that is given that will help people, if they follow the clues, find the Ark of the Covenant.
Okay. Now let me throw a wrench in that theory real quick.
No, not a wrench.
Here's a wrench.
All right.
Jeremiah 3:16.
Yes, he said it'd be destroyed.
He says that
Be no more.
it's come to pass when you're multiplied and increased in the land in those days, says the Lord, they shall say no more the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord, neither shall it come to mind, neither shall they remember it, neither shall they visit it, neither shall that be done any more. So it seems like he's saying that it's just gone forever. It's not going to be used anymore.
Now, when the Babylonians, when they did defeat the Jews and they destroyed Jerusalem and they destroyed the temple, there is a list, an inventory list of items that they took.
Yeah.
And the ark is not listed.
Mm-hmm.
That's why some people say, well, surely if the Babylonians would have taken the ark, it would have been listed in the list of items that they took.
Yeah, you would think.
You would think so. And then they were allowed to bring the items that he took. They were allowed to bring them back years later when they were given permission.
But what if they just destroyed it, and that's why it wasn't listed?
There are people that believe that they got destroyed.
Yeah.
Some people believe that prior to this time, that during the reign of Manasseh, it was during the reign of Rehoboam, that when Shishak came up and he took stuff out of Jerusalem, that he took the Ark of the Covenant then.
Yeah.
And there's others believe that during the time of Manasseh that people took the Ark and it eventually made its way down to Egypt and then down into Ethiopia. And there's a lot of people, even to this day, they believe that the Ark of the Covenant is in Ethiopia, and I think it's in a town called Axum.
Well, isn't there a whole group of people in Ethiopia that claim to be Jews?
Yes.
Claim to be descended from the Jews?
Yeah. They say that I was hearing this one guy said that, I don't know if this is myth, legend, or somewhat history, I don't know, but 9 months after the Queen of Sheba from Ethiopia, when she came up to see Solomon, she had a baby.
Okay.
That's what they say. That's one theory is talking about. And then somehow
old Solomon, man.
Well, he was pretty prolific.
Yeah, he was.
He got around, and that the ark came during that time, and they gave some reasons why. But most people that hold to the ark being in Ethiopia believe that it's at the Church of St. Mary of Zion in Axum, Ethiopia. You ever heard of Graham Hancock? He does the ancient mysteries and all that stuff.
No.
He has a lot of YouTube specials.
Not
he
bringing
has
up
a lot
anything.
of, I think, Netflix specials, ancient something. Anyway, he has a book called The Sign and the Seal, and he does a lot of research on this. And he firmly believes that the Ark of the Covenant is in Axum in Ethiopia.
Okay.
And he believes that there only one person can see the Ark, and they're like the guardian of the Ark. And you get chosen, nobody really wants to be chosen for it, because you get cataracts and you only live like for 2 or 3 years, because he says it's radioactive.
That's
And then he says that's why they got the tumors. The Philistines got the tumors. That it's some type of radioactivity associated.
but wouldn't that have hurt the Jews also then
You would
if it
think
was
so.
radioactive?
You would think so. But that doesn't go well with what he's saying, though, Paul.
Okay.
Okay, we want.
I'm just trying to think about this like,
That's what Graham Hancock says, and he says, he was even on Joe Rogan talking about it.
Really?
Yeah.
Joe
And,
Rogan is the man of the hour right now, isn't he?
I saw recently where Kid Rock was basically witnessing to Joe Rogan, asking him if he wanted to know Jesus.
Well, interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know Kid Rock was a believer. I thought he just beat up people at the Waffle House. Yeah, but I'm glad. I mean, it's really interesting. Now, here's another place where they say the Ark of the Covenant. People have said before it's in Ireland.
In Ireland, of all places. Huh?
Yeah, the Hill of Tara. From 1899 to 1902, there's a group. They were called the British Israelites, and they were founded in 1850. They believed that the British language descended from proper Hebrew.
I think some some linguists might take issue with that claim.
Probably. And then one of the lost tribes, they said, took the Ark of the Covenant to Ireland. And also they were driven by Masonic beliefs, and they believed it was underneath that hill, the Hill of Tara, in Ireland. Now, there's a lot of things that took place on the Hill of Tara. That was a place where the pagan gods were, where they worshiped the pagan gods and all that.
I've been to Ireland, but I never saw the Hill of Tara.
Yeah, it's like, I think they said maybe an hour north of Dublin.
Oh, okay.
But, that was kind of out of the blue that somebody would say that the Ark of the Covenant is in Ireland.
Well, it's one of those things, just like a lot of other relics, that you can expect there to be a lot of mythology and tall tales and stuff because everybody wants to say they've got it, right? Just like the Holy Grail,
Right.
the Holy Grail. But I have to wonder about the Holy Grail. Like, what's holy about the Holy Grail? Just the fact that Jesus touched it and used it? Yeah. So wouldn't there be more than one? Wouldn't every cup that Jesus drank out of for 30 years, wouldn't they all be holy?
It was the one that he did on the night he was betrayed.
Yeah.
He did a Last Supper with. That would be the one that they would say would be special.
Oh, that's the reason.
Yeah.
I mean, I would think any cup that Jesus himself held would probably be special to people.
Yeah. Yeah, the Ark of the Covenant, we do know that there was a time when David was trying to bring it into Jerusalem, and they had it on a cart instead of carrying it with poles.
So they weren't doing it the way that they were instructed.
And Uzzah stuck out his hand in order to keep it from falling off the cart, is what it appears. Yeah. And God struck him dead.
Yeah. Now, what's your opinion? Because obviously that was supernatural.
Sure.
But in your opinion, if we were to locate the ark today, now we're not in the old covenant, right? We're in the new covenant. So do you think that if you were to locate it today that it would still possess supernatural properties, or would it just be like any other piece of furniture?
Dude, I don't know what would happen. I do know Revelation 11:19 talks about the Ark of the Covenant will be in heaven.
Okay.
But, the things on earth are just,
it's just a shadow.
Shadow of what's in heaven.
So you think it was talking about the exact one from earth, or just a heavenly copy of, or a heavenly version?
A heavenly version of it.
Yeah.
But there's some people say, well, it's not on earth because it's up in heaven now.
Interesting.
That's also...
I don't know. I don't claim to have knowledge of this, but to me, just thinking theologically about it, I would assume that if you did find it today, it would just be like any other ancient relic, just any other piece of ancient history. It would not be a supernatural item today.
Yeah.
Because to me, it seems like the supernatural part of it had to do with God's old covenant when it was active, right? Mm-hmm. Now that we're in the new covenant, I don't know why it would continue to be supernatural at this point.
Yeah, there's no need for a mercy seat.
Yeah.
Because Christ, he shed his blood.
Yeah.
And that was just a shadow of the substance being Christ.
Yeah, so it seems like it would just be, a piece of wood with gold on it now, if you did find it. It'd be very interesting, but I doubt that it would be striking people dead, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know what the significance of it would be if somebody were to find it.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be like finding anything else. Like, it'd be like finding, they've claimed for years that they found the chariot wheels at the bottom of the Red Sea, that were left by Pharaoh. It'd be like finding something like that, or like finding Noah's Ark. It'd be like finding something like that. It'd be very interesting, but
yeah, but I mean, you go into the Ark of the Covenant if it still had the original 10 Commandments written by the finger of God.
Yeah,
I mean, that would be
interesting. But it seems like it just seems like that it must have probably been. To me, it probably must have been destroyed. Like,
yeah.
Otherwise, somebody would have come out with it by now.
And, to be
somebody
honest,
would have looted it and tried to sell it to make money. It would have surfaced.
Well, the Nazis tried to get it in the Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yeah, they were trying, and they succeeded. And then it melted their faces.
It melted their faces and shot them through with a big hole. And then a portal opens up in the clouds, and big lightning stuff comes down, and then it sucks everything back up, and then they put the lid back on. And you know where it wound up at the end of the Raiders of the Lost Ark? You remember?
I forgot now.
It's in a box.
In the Smithsonian?
No, no. It's in a box in a military institution. Installation, not institution.
Is it in a deep underground military
No, it's in some
dome?
warehouse. They just put it in a box like everything else is in a box, and you cannot tell it apart from anything else.
Yeah.
That's supposedly, when the Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Woe be to the one who accidentally opens up that box next time, right?
Yeah, yeah. But why do people have an interest in finding it? I mean, somebody like Graham Hancock, he's pretty intense about it. But why would he? He said it. Somebody else that's not a believer talks about it. It's extraterrestrial technology.
Yeah. Well, I don't believe that. Obviously, as a historical piece of evidence, it would be great to have.
Yeah.
Because we could see an artifact that shows the truth of the Bible. It would just be a useful artifact to have. Be wonderful to be able to look at that. But in terms of it being supernatural, like I said, I seriously doubt that it would be supernatural now in the New Covenant. Okay.
Well, God did move upon these two guys that actually were the ones that built the thing, Bezalel and Aholiab.
Yeah.
So they were equipped by God, empowered by God to make the Ark of the Covenant.
Mm-hmm.
The significance was placed upon it. It was such a, even there in time of Samuel, Eli originally was the priest there, and his two sons, they were bad boys. But they took the Ark of the Covenant to battle with them kind of as a lucky charm, because they weren't committed to the Lord, but they thought, hey, we'll be the Philistines if we have the Ark of the Covenant with us.
Exactly.
And God allowed it to be captured.
Yeah.
So, when you talk about something like the Ark of the Covenant and people giving it all kinds of significance, and they're coming at it more from a historical point of view rather than from a viewpoint of faith.
Yeah.
And I've been listening to some things recently and doing a little bit of reading. And, there are folks that are extremely interested in technology and artifacts from way, way, way long ago.
Yeah.
When we start talking about the Ark of the Covenant, let's talk about some of the construction that even in Egypt.
Yeah, yeah.
Even in Peru.
Well, the ancient
Mexico.
aliens type people, they claim that there's no way humans could have made those things. It must have been aliens that were helping them or doing it.
Right.
My feeling is that what these people that are saying that don't realize, these ancient people were very, very intelligent. In fact, if you think about it, they were most likely more intelligent than us, not less.
Yes.
Because every generation, we get just a little bit weaker because we're having these genetic mutations that happen every generation. You get, I believe the figure is at about 100 new mutations get passed on each generation.
So we're just a bunch of mutants.
We're a bunch of mutants, yeah.
My goodness.
And mutations, contrary to the evolutionary viewpoint, mutations are almost never a good thing.
So-
Almost always a bad thing. So
So you don't mutate your way to success.
you don't mutate your way to success. You mutate your way to death. You know, it's a terrible thing. So
Yeah, they were smart.
so what I'm getting at is, you go way back in time. That's many generations fewer mutations, closer to God's original perfect design. So these were
Plus,
smart, strong, intelligent, capable people.
You add to it what some people are now really talking a lot about, the fallen technology, the Nephilim,
Yeah.
the trading of women for technology.
Yeah, so that's more of like what you would read it, for example, in the book of Enoch.
Yeah.
I think it talks about that. So the Bible does talk about the fallen angels in Genesis 6. It doesn't mention, in the Bible, it doesn't mention the technology aspect. But the book of Enoch does suggest that they were bringing some type of technology with them, these fallen angels. And then if you look at some like other myths, like the myth of Prometheus. You know about Prometheus?
Tell me about them.
I believe Prometheus is the one, and if I'm messing this up, then somebody on YouTube can fact check me. But I believe he's the one that stole the fire of the gods and gave it to the men.
Oh, okay.
And that's kind of this idea of something from the divine realm that we weren't supposed to have access to is taken and given to men.
As it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be in the days of the coming of the Son of Man.
So I'm not going to say in particular what I think happened, but I'm certainly open to the possibility that when you're looking at this demonic event in Genesis 6, what were they teaching people things that they didn't know? Maybe it's conceivable.
You know, I think when I think about technology today, and I think about wireless internet.
Well, we did that episode on the cube. Remember the cube?
Yeah, it's like, how do you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of what we know and what we learn and what we create is probably fed to us through the spiritual, whether it be evil or good.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot
some
of people
hear you say that and they say, "Man, you're full of baloney."
Yeah.
Or spam.
Yeah.
You're more full of spam than baloney, right?
Well, so I think I'd go with baloney because with baloney,
Yeah.
many people don't know this outside of the Soviet Eastern Bloc. But
Okay.
if you cut bologna into chunks, you can make a pretty good salad out of it. Mayonnaise salad. It's called salad Olivier.
Really?
And anybody from Russia or the
Salad
former Soviet
Olivier.
Union will know about this.
Wow.
It's very well known.
Well, you know,
salad.
you can fry bologna, but you can also fry that spam.
But
You
over
ever-
there, they don't call it bologna. They call it
Olivier.
doctor's sausage.
Ugh.
And any of them will tell you it's not the same thing as bologna. But to me,
That's bologna.
to my tastes, it's pretty much like bologna.
Yeah, you know,
But,
I grew up on bologna. I liked it when you put on a mayonnaise. You know, put mayonnaise on a piece of bread, and then you put that fried piece of bologna on there, and you could see the liquid coming off the bologna. Yeah.
I haven't fried a lot of bologna in my time.
Yeah, and you know the spam.
In fact, I haven't eaten
fried spam sandwiches are really good.
I do like fried spam.
Yeah.
And I don't think I've actually eaten bologna on a sandwich since probably I was a kid in the 90s.
Really, does it bring back bad memories?
I just haven't done it. I don't know. It just hasn't
Yeah.
occurred to me to do it.
Yeah.
But you can buy it in a big piece and cut it up into little cubes.
Yeah.
Mix it with carrots, peas, potato, boiled egg, and mayonnaise.
I don't like boiled eggs too much.
You might not like this one then.
Yeah, you know, every time I had boiled eggs when I was in kindergarten.
Oh, and dill. I forgot to mention that's important.
Yeah.
Dill. Lots and lots
They
of
put
dill.
that with those eggs a lot,
Yeah.
don't they? Yeah, we had a teacher we had an Easter egg hunt. She took all our eggs and made egg salad sandwiches. I mean, you don't do that to 5-year-olds.
No.
You know what I mean? I mean, it was terrible, and it's just a bad memory. There's technology that is out there, and I think because there's this newfound interest in possible ancient technology now.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but it may not be an issue of technology. It might be an issue of ingenuity and intelligence. Like, you can do a lot simple systems, with
Yeah.
simple tools.
Yeah.
And, I'm of the opinion that the pyramids and things like that, they could have been made and were made without the use of extraterrestrial technology or anything, just by lots and lots of hard work, but also intelligent engineers figuring out how to use their simple tools to do things that we wouldn't do today because, I'll tell you the truth, we're pretty lazy today.
Yeah, but we
don't work as hard as people used to work.
One of the things I've heard people say about even down in Peru with some of the, what do you call them, the temples, the ziggurats or whatever they are down there, where they quarried the stones and they're massive.
Yeah.
And for them to get them from where they were quarried to where they built that, structure,
Yeah.
it was, basically impossible using the means of that day.
But see, that's where they're adding in an assumption. What are the means of that day? They don't know.
Yeah.
They're making an assumption.
Because a lot was lost during the flood.
Well, now, okay, so during the flood, first of all, the flood utterly destroyed the crust of the earth.
Do you think structures survived?
Absolutely could not have, because the whole crust of the earth got recycled. The crust of the earth went down into the mantle.
Yeah.
That's subduction. So it's plate tectonics.
Yeah.
But in the creation world, we don't just have plate tectonics. We have catastrophic plate tectonics, CPT. And what that means is, at the time of the flood, you likely had one megacontinent, like what they call Pangea.
Right.
But what happened at the flood is that it would have rapidly and catastrophically broken up, and it would have the crust of the earth actually was subducted, which is happening today at a very slow rate. But during the flood, it would have been a catastrophically high rate. And much of the crust, I don't know if it was 100% of the crust or just a large percentage, I'm not sure. But a lot of the crust would have been rapidly subducted under and is now actually in the mantle. And this is actually one of the things that...
So you can find artifacts if you go down far enough?
Well, no, because the mantle is molten.
So they would have been melted.
Melted into nothing. But there is a mystery for the secular scientists that don't believe the Bible, because they do scans into the mantle, and they find large areas of crust in the mantle that is actually still cooler than the surrounding mantle. It's actually a cold spot down in there. Okay. And they don't understand how that's possible, because over millions of years, that temperature would have equalized. There wouldn't be a cold spot. But the reason that there is because the flood didn't happen millions of years ago. It only happened about 4,500 years ago. Okay. And it hasn't been enough time for those temperatures in the mantle to equal out. So that's an interesting piece of evidence for the flood. But what it means is that much, if not all, of the crust of the earth would have been totally recycled during the flood. What happened is that the whole earth was covered in water. Yeah. And then catastrophically, in the Psalms you read about, I forget which Psalm it was now, I won't guess, but it's 100-something, I think, maybe 115 or 116, but don't hold me to that. But one of the Psalms talks about the valleys shrank down and the mountains rose up. Mm-hmm. And that's what we in the creation world believe happened to end the flood, is that you had this, in some way, you had this uplift. Mm-hmm. Geologists talk about uplift. It would have been catastrophically quick uplift that would have caused the floodwaters to gush off of the continents, the newly formed continents. So all of this would have been highly catastrophic, and it would have destroyed anything.
And so you
there's no way that the
pyramids could not have been pre-flood.
Not any way in the world. Okay. No, they would have been utterly destroyed by the flood.
So they would have had acquired that technology after.
Yeah, but I'm not even sure I'm willing to say that it.
So you think it's just hard work, determination, and a little bit
of good engineering sense.
Not Yankee ingenuity, but,
Egyptian ingenuity.
Yeah.
Human ingenuity. Yeah.
Human ingenuity.
Yeah, no, I don't necessarily buy the claim that you needed high technology to do it, because we have high technology today. We can't do it. So why do
So
we have
you just think they just put their back into it?
I think they put their back into it. They spent
a lot
generations.
of free slave labor.
Yeah, they spent generations making these things. And, we don't do that today.
But the precision that they did that way.
Well, you can look up YouTube videos about precision work. You would be surprised. Now, it's not quick. It's very slow. But you can do precision work with simple hand tools. You absolutely can. It just takes a long, long time. It's a slow process. But they had patience back then that we don't have. They weren't worried about their TikTok feeds or their YouTube.
They weren't part of the union back then.
No. So
they didn't get any benefits.
I think they worked for generations, and they worked very hard, slow, manual, tough labor, but also using good, intelligent processes that many of which we maybe have lost today. Mm-hmm. But I would think more along those lines to explain, because you go back to the Tower of Babel. Mm-hmm. Everybody was in one place and they started building a tower. That was after the flood, not before. Mm-hmm. And then they were dispersed all over the world. Mm-hmm. It makes sense that those people that were dispersed from there, they started doing their own thing, like what they remember seeing at Babel. Mm-hmm. They started replicating that in their new place. Okay. So that's why I think you see a similar type of building all over the planet. Because it's all memory.
It is amazing that they have those ziggurats.
The ziggurats, I think, are a memory that goes all the way back to that first Tower of Babel. Yeah. But all of that is post-flood, not pre-flood.
Yeah. So when the Incas say, or the Aztecs, when the conquistadors come to them and say, how did y'all build this? And they say, it was here when we got here.
Well, I don't know. First of all, I don't know about that quote. I'd have to figure out where that came from. Okay. But assuming that quote is accurate, there have been so many movements of people that we don't know about. Okay. The history of this whole North and South America, the history is barely known prior to the time of Christopher Columbus.
History that
There's a lot of history we don't know about. And it's just recently come out that the whole Amazon forest, the rainforest, it didn't used to be a rainforest. Yeah. It used to be a whole civilization there, with farms and cities. It was not a rainforest back thousands of years ago, and it's now just kind of a post-apocalyptic for those civilizations. They had their apocalypse, and now the Amazon rainforest is just the post-apocalyptic remnants of their civilization.
Man, I'd hate to live in the rainforest, Amazon rainforest. You get eaten up by all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, but back then, before it was allowed to become overgrown, it was actually it was a whole civilization there that we know virtually nothing about. Yeah. So the Incas very well could be telling the truth. Maybe it was made by earlier people that came ultimately from the Babel. But, there were just all these movements of people that we know nothing about, because we barely have any history from before the time of Christopher Columbus coming over here. We barely have any history from before that. So there's a lot we don't know about what went on here. We do know, obviously, that the people were pagans. They were... I don't think it's wrong to say they were savages.
Yeah, they were cannibalistic. One thing I read about the Aztecs not too long ago in a book is that, they wouldn't eat their own people. They'd just eat their enemies.
Yeah.
They didn't know anything about love your enemies.
No.
Yeah, they would eat their enemies.
It's popular today, especially among the politically correct group, it's popular to say that the Christian Europeans did such a horrible thing coming over here.
There's a lot of horrible things happening before they got here.
Lots of horrible stuff was happening before we got here. And I'm not going to say that Christopher Columbus and all those guys, Cortez, and all those guys, and
DeSoto.
I'm not going to say that there weren't lots and lots of bad things that they did.
Yeah,
because there were.
It's true, they did.
They did evil things. Yeah. They weren't perfect saints themselves.
But the culture over here in the Americas was not some type of pristine culture.
No, it wasn't. That's the lie. The lie they tell you is that it was some kind of utopia, and then we came and messed it up.
Now, the Aztecs did have some pretty good advancements.
Yeah.
I mean, their city was rivaled any of the cities in Europe. I mean,
Yeah.
they had some big roads and, plumbing and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
But, they just had the wrong type of appetite, man. They like Idi Amin. If Idi Amin was going to have you over for supper,
Yeah.
he was going to have you for supper.
Yeah.
And, man, you read some of these accounts of these conquistadors, and, man, they would eat them.
Yeah. No, I've listened to some of it, and there were atrocities being done on both sides.
Mm-hmm.
But the best thing that came out of that whole colonial period was that Christianity got brought
Right.
to this.
Right. And it did transform it in a good way.
Yeah, it transformed it in a great way. So,
yeah.
you can say what you want about the individuals and the mistakes they made and the evil things that they may have done or did do, but at the end of the day, the fact that Christianity got brought was a wonderful thing that I believe God has used throughout history to be a force for good.
Yeah,
So,
nowadays, we don't have to worry about them eating the dogs and the cats. Back then, we had to worry about them eating our friends and our family.
Yeah.
So-
It's bad, but unfortunately, the Western world is now turning its back on Christianity, and that's going to have disastrous results.
And cannibalism is coming back somewhat.
I hadn't heard that.
Yeah, there's some weirdos doing some weird things.
Oh, you name it, it's coming back.
Yeah, you get away from the gospel, you get away from Christian civilization, and you want to go back into paganism there, and you see all the stuff that's associated with this paganism stuff.
Yeah.
It's not good. I mean,
Yeah.
but there's so many people they want, like we said before, they want the benefits of a Christian culture without Christ.
Exactly, and that's never going to work.
It won't work that way.
But to come full circle back around to the Ark of the Covenant, to me,
This is a full circle.
yeah, to me, I don't think it was ancient aliens technology. I think it was a supernatural thing that God used in the Old Covenant. I don't know what your opinion is. If I'm putting my money on it, I'll probably just say I think it was probably destroyed by the Babylonians, because I do think, if the Jews had hidden it, what would have been the reason to hide it, right? For what reason, right? You would think that the reason they would hide it would be to be able to use it in a second temple. But then the fact that they didn't use it in the second temple.
That's the thing about it. If they didn't use it, if they knew where it was, they'd go down to Ethiopia and get it, or go into Egypt and get it, or go get it wherever it is.
Yeah, I mean, if you were ever going to use it,
if it was under the Temple Mount, they could have gotten it then, because the Dome of the Rock wasn't there for 1,000 years later.
Yeah, so there are some kind of shady people out there that have claimed to have found it, or they claim to know where it is, and I just don't buy it. I think that they're just being sensationalistic.
Yeah, like Graham Hancock, like I say, he believes it's down there, and he's even asked one of the, I think it was the Israeli ambassador to Ethiopia. He said, hey, why hadn't y'all gotten it?
Mm-hmm.
And he said, y'all got the Mossad and everything. If y'all could come get this.
Yeah.
And he said, man, we don't want it. Do you know what it would do if they started bringing back the Ark of the Covenant and sacrifices started to be reinstituted, and you get back up on the Temple Mount?
I think they are going to reinstitute sacrifices.
They will.
I don't think they need the Ark of the Covenant for that.
And we know what that's going to be.
Yeah.
That's when it's all coming to a close.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, anything else to say about the Ark of the Covenant? Do you recommend Raiders of the Lost Ark?
For me, it's not. I'm just not a huge fan, but that's just me.
I'll tell you one thing I have figured out, though, all this talk about technology that we talked about.
Yes.
I do understand why Kip Dynamite loved technology so much.
But not as much as LaFonda.
LaFonda was the love of his life, but
Yes.
he did love technology.
Technology.
He really did. And technology, how these people did it, and the interest that there is now in ancient technology.
Now, you brought up ancient technology, but let me put this out there to you.
Okay.
The technology that we have today, do you know what ultimately makes it possible? Where did it all come from? When did it get started?
When did it get started?
And I think it got started in the Industrial Revolution, right?
Yeah.
And what is it that allows the Industrial Revolution to get started? What was the...
Capitalism?
Well, capitalism, but I'm thinking in terms of a resource. Like a physical resource.
What is was it combustion?
Yeah, combustion. Coal
Yeah.
and oil.
Yeah.
Now, what is coal and oil?
Yeah.
We call it a fossil fuel,
Fossil
right?
fuel, yeah.
Now, where do fossils come from?
They come from the flood.
They
right?
came from the flood.
Yeah.
So
It all goes back
it all goes back to the flood. But so does that? So my point here is, did they have fossil fuels before the flood?
No.
The answer is no.
That's why they think there's energy sources in the pyramid and other
Yeah.
things.
So before the flood, I don't believe that there's people out there that say, oh, maybe Noah had a computer. Maybe there was full technology before the flood and then it all got lost at the flood. I don't think so, because they could not have had an industrial revolution. They could not have had mass production. They could not have had cars and trains and any of that, because there were no fossil fuels before the flood. The flood is what gave us
The fossil
the
fuels.
fossil fuels.
So they would have had, but they could have had another energy source.
That would be just pure speculation.
Of course.
Because I don't know. But in terms of using the type of technology that we have today, there's no way they could have had it.
Because they would not have had the, as we say in South Georgia, they would not have had the oil.
They would not have had the oil.
Oil.
Right.
I did not say oil till I moved up here. I always said oil.
Yeah.
So it's oil.
Yeah, oil.
Okay. So.
And foil.
Foil.
You say foil?
Foil.
Tin foil?
Tinfoil. Kind of sounds like tinfoil, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
Tinfoil. I need some tinfoil. I don't know why we did that. You know, it's just one of those things that everybody says.
There's
something.
a word for that. It's called monophthongization.
Really?
Yeah.
Monophthongization?
Yeah.
I can't even say that.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So those are our thoughts about the Ark of the Covenant and a few little other items that we threw in there. Some
Bonus content.
Some bonus content, even with whatever you said of the Earth's crust. You kept talking about crust. I started thinking about thin crust, thick crust, stuffed crust.
Yeah, now you're talking my language.
Yeah, we'll have a flood pizza.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Well, we want to thank you for being with us on this edition of the Uncensored Pilgrims, and we'll see you next time. And we need to let you know that the views that we express on this podcast belong to Marty McLain and Paul Price. They are our views. They do not reflect the views of anyone else. And with that said, we hope you have a great week, and we'll see you next time on the podcast.